It's time to complain about our wives. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. Today we're diving back into the world of Garphill, talking Raiders of the North Sea. Then we're going to be complaining about our better halves' disinterest in fantastic games. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and as always, seated halfway across the country from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
Here casting the pod, oh yeah.
Peer casting?
Here casting the pod, know what I'm saying?
Here casting the pod. I was here.
Yeah, casting the pod. You know what I'm saying?
All right, I guess that's it for our breaking the ice. Cody, intro question for you.
Yeah, man, what you got?
Which game on your shelf would you play solo?
Would I play solo?
You got to pick it. So to my knowledge, neither of us has really ever done this like solo variant of multiplayer games, all that. Not really into that. Either of us haven't been. So I'm wondering if you had to play one of your games solo, what it's going to be.
Yeah, I've thought about doing that every now and then, but it's like, yeah, if I'm gonna do that by myself, I'd rather just play a video game.
Sure.
Know what I'm saying? I mean, I know all the Stonemaier games have some sort of solo module to them, but it's like if I'm gonna play solo Scythe, I just get out digital Scythe and play against bots.
Yeah,
Know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Same with Wingspan.
Yeah. Tapestry I've played online. It's like all the games I have interest in playing, I've found some way to play online. Let me look at my list because
so
I'm not anywhere near my shelf.
Maybe the best question is, what's the game that you don't have a digital version of that's like the most multiplayer solo game? You know, like what's? Because I did this with
most multiplayer solo game. What are you talking
yeah, you know
about?
what I mean? Like where the game is technically multiplayer, but everyone's literally just kind of doing their own thing, and there's almost no player interaction. Like Three Sisters is this way, right?
Yeah.
Like I actually did Three Sisters solo, believe it or not, because I was borrowing it from a friend, and I was just like, I'd already played it once, and I was like, there's literally almost no player interaction whatsoever, and if I play solo, there won't be any wait time, so I'll give it a shot. And the solo system was super simple, and it was honestly a more satisfying experience than playing it multiplayer.
Not a bad thought. I'm gonna shove that aside though, because I don't care. If I was gonna do a solo game, I'd want to play a more in-depth game. Like the idea of just breaking out a little easy game, it's not worth it, man. You gotta invest in it. Okay. So how about I throw like Paladins of the West Kingdom at you?
Huh. Okay.
That'd be. Is there a solo mode?
I'm sure there is.
Probably.
I'm sure there is. I don't know if any of the North Sea games had solo variants. Maybe they did. I'm not sure. But I feel like by the time you got to West Kingdom, it was popular enough to do that.
But if they have some way to manage the worker placement system, I think there is a solo mode because you can like flip the board over, I think, and then it changes like the spaces. So yeah, Paladins. There you go. Okay, it's a game I miss. I don't play enough of that.
Yeah. Well, Kirsten doesn't like that much, right?
Well, we need to get it out again.
Speaking
it's been a long
which.
time since we've played it. Yeah.
Maybe we'll hear about that later. I don't know.
Maybe. Spoilers. Did you already answer it? What was it? Three Sisters you were saying?
Technically, I don't own Three Sisters. So I guess that doesn't qualify because I said which game on my shelf.
Yeah.
The thing is, so you're saying you would want a really big experience. And so for me, that would be like, Arc Nova is really multiplayer solo, but I wouldn't want to sit down for 2+ hours and play Arc Nova, I feel like, by myself,
Sure.
Because part of an experience, even for a game that's multiplayer solo, is just seeing how the other person does and comparing, kind of how you're doing to how they're doing. I feel like that's an important part in a lot of games, at least to me, for the experience.
Sure.
So whatever I say, I'm not going to agree with it right after I say it. So let's go with cartographers. I don't know.
Cartographers. What a trash pick.
I have no idea. Yeah, I agree. I suck.
Yeah, you know what we should do is just move on from that dumb question you had. I wanted to ask you. No, I didn't want to ask you. I want to tell you about something. Maybe I do want to ask you if you've heard of this thing that I'm about to tell you about. It's important news in the gaming world.
Okay.
Have you heard of the great kerfuffle with the term meeple?
I heard something about, I don't want to say it's Carcassonne, but whoever owns Carcassonne is...
Hans im Glück?
Yeah, maybe, or I don't know.
No, it is Hans im Glück.
They own it because I know Z-Man's also printed it, so I don't know who actually owns it. But
Okay.
okay, so sure, Hans im Glück is potentially trademarking the word meeple, but I know it has something to do with, it's some kind of retaliation to EU restrictions on something, but I don't have that much information on it.
Well, it sounds like they've been trying to like lock down the trademark for a long time. Like Carcassonne looks like it came out 2000. So yeah, it's been over 2 decades it's been out for. And it said I found this article because I saw people referencing it on like one of the Facebook board game groups, saying that they succeeded in locking it down in 2019. So it's like been officially theirs since that date. But what everyone has been talking about is they took a big action and sent a cease and desist letter to a formerly known company called Cogito Ergo Meeple because of the term meeple. And they were producing a board game called Meeple Inc. And Hans im Glück was like, nope, can't do that. No meeple for you. It's ours. And so the company had to change their name. Now they're Cotswold Games. And they had to change the name of the Kickstarter to Tabletop Inc. So they had to take meeple out of everything. So it's like, what's going to happen next? Because apparently it's not just the word, it's like the likeness. And guess what, Nate? We have a meeple in our logo for the podcast.
You know what? I think we're flying under the radar well enough. We don't have to worry about it. But I was just going to say, I wonder about, there are much more popular YouTube channels than ours that have meeple in the picture or in the title of the channel.
Yeah,
you know, like
Meeple
one
University,
thing board
that's a
gamers
big
love
one.
to do is do puns on board game stuff, and so you get a lot of meeple this, meeple that, and these are people a lot more successful than us, so that could be interesting.
Or what about games that reference it? Like in a Honey Buzz, they're called Beeples instead of Meeples.
Well, that's fine because that's a derivative, right? It's not directly, it's just like a spoof film.
I guess so. If it's like a fair use kind of thing, like what if you come up with a fantasy game and your space wizards are called Schmedai? Like, is that too close?
But you have like Spaceballs, isn't that like kind of a Star Wars spoof? I don't know. I haven't seen it, but
that's true. It's kind of like a sci-fi in general spoof.
It's
but especially
always
Star Wars.
a fine line, anyways, right? When it comes to this sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's not as big as a deal as it sounds like it might be, but we'll see what happens with it. See how it develops.
Sure. Just want to bring that up. I feel like it's our duty to report on significant board game news every now and then, even though it's probably the first time we've done it in like 20 episodes.
I was just gonna say, I don't know about duty. We don't really. Back in the day, like literally before we started recording, we talked about having a news section, but decided
we did.
that would be too overwhelming from the start, so we'd work it in later, and we never did that. So
maybe as we run out of game of the weeks that we can do in common, we can start replacing that with news of the week.
We might. Well, but we talked about doing like game of the weeks where it's a game neither of us has played, and we just look it up and give our invalid opinions on it.
Okay, our thoughts on it. I think that would be fun.
All right, let's talk new plays, Cody.
Yeah.
You want me to go first, or you want to go first?
I've been playing 10% of nothing, so you go ahead.
All right. New plays, just a couple here. One is Barcelona. This is a midweight Euro. Very beautiful cover. It's stuck in my memory before I played it, but just as something that I was always like, this is just like a beautiful cover for a game. I absolutely love it. The game is fine. I wouldn't say I love it. I've only played it once. It's got kind of not really a target system, but this grid of actions that is the city, and you're placing workers down in the grid, and so you get the two actions that spot is the intersection of, and those actions are all randomized around the perimeter. So it's a cool kind of action system like that. And then you're building city districts, you're moving up some tracks, you're unlocking other things and buying other point tiles and that sort of thing. It's kind of your standard mix a bunch of mechanisms together. I feel like it looks kind of nice. I don't know if I would say there's anything too special in it, but I would like to play it again.
It looks refreshingly different.
You mean as far as just the look or maybe how it plays?
I'm like looking at a picture of like the board setup, and there's like a lot going on, but it has a different sort of feel. I feel like just from the visuals.
Okay.
Come on, man.
Okay, I'm not even sure what to say.
Sometimes. Yeah, great opinion, Cody.
I neither disagree. I'm not sure if I agree with you is the thing. I don't think I'd say I disagree, but I don't know if I agree either.
It kind of looks confusing, but I'm sure if you learned it, obviously it would make more sense.
Sure.
But,
yeah. Something that's not confusing nor refreshing is the next game I played, which is Caesar's Empire. I was a little bit shocked by this one because this is, I believe as of the most current Dice Tower Top 100 for Chris, this is his number 7, I think, this game. And I was a little bit surprised because, you know how Chris is. He loves heavy, kind of usually dry-ish Euros.
Yeah.
And like very complex games. This
Big
game
games
is very...
for a big guy.
I'm not cutting that. I don't care what you tell me.
Right.
This is a very simple route building game, or network building game, I guess you could say, and kind of set collection. And that's literally all it is. It's a little bit of set collection and a little bit of route building. The game takes like 15 minutes, and you're basically just placing pieces on the board to go pick up different goods that do nothing except score on a little grid that you place them on, which is your player board. And then your network can score points. Every time you add into your network, you'll score points for how long it is, basically. And that's pretty much literally it. You're also collecting some city pieces for set collection. That's it.
Okay.
There's a lot of variability, I guess, but we played it twice back to back, and I was kind of like, don't know if I would really want to play this again, honestly. It's just so simple and so straightforward that, I don't know, maybe the meta is lost on me in the game, but I didn't find it that intriguing.
The board kind of reminds me of Concordia a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same part of the world.
Look at the setup.
And then it's got a bunch of tokens out on the board. But
like
and I mean, I guess
stuff.
you could say maybe it's a little similar to Concordia in some very, very basic ways. But it's like, there's like 3 rules in the game. I mean, you would not believe how simple it is. So not that that's a bad thing. It's, for me, it's just not something that's going to bring me back again and again necessarily.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, no spoilers, but I don't know if you know what happens to Caesar's Empire.
I'll tell you what happened in my game. I got wrecked.
Yeah, got wrecked?
My empire did, yeah.
Did the Huns show up or something? And the
No,
Visigoths?
I was chilling in the south, mostly.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's how you do it. It's
That's how
nice
you
and
do it.
warm.
Yeah. Last
All
but
right.
not least, I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's called Under Falling Skies. know anything
Isn't
about
this
this?
like a solo game?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am
This is
familiar
a
with it. Tell me more.
Solitaire or solo only game. I decided to go out on a ledge. What's the right? Go out
A
on
limb?
branch? Limb. Branch.
I
Decided-
found myself earlier going out on this ledge.
Go out on a ledge.
Yeah.
Decided to go out on a limb and buy this, actually, because Anna's been really busy with summer classes and work, and so I've had more free time than her. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'm gonna try this. I'm still not interested in playing. I mean, you saw how hard it was. I couldn't even pick a game during the intro question because I'm not interested in really playing a multiplayer game as a solo variant. Generally, I'm assuming the experience at multiplayer is going to be better, and I'm just going to feel kind of depressed and like missing the social aspect. But I decided, hey, a game that's designed to just be a puzzle for one player, then it's really just kind of a puzzle, or it's kind of like you said earlier, just like playing a video game, basically. So let's give it a go. And it's surprisingly pleasant, I would say. A little stressful. Yeah. It's dice placement, but it has this cool mechanism where there's 5 columns, and you have to place one of your dice in every column every round, and there's a few different actions in each column. But also each column aligns with a little alien ship that's coming down to attack you, and whatever number you place there is how many spaces that alien ship moves down that column. So your action will be stronger, but the stronger your action is, the faster that ship is going to move down towards you. And so it's about trying to complete some goals before you take too much damage. And there's more to it than that. There's ways to destroy alien ships and, manipulate them a little bit. And the actions are interesting. And it's got a whole campaign to it that I haven't even dipped my toes into yet. But so far, I would say pleasantly surprised with it. So that's Under Falling Skies, and that's it for me.
Is it conceivable to play this like with thine spouse?
I mean,
Or to just be kind of like one person is doing everything, the other person just sort of watching?
I feel like that's more or less what it would be, unless
Okay.
you work well together, right?
Okay.
Because it's kind of like, I don't know, playing Chronicles of Crime, for example. You could play that solo, or you could play it with multiple people, and the only thing that the only benefit that multiple people is going to bring is just more perspectives on how to accomplish the goal, right?
Sure.
So it's depends on whether or not that's your kind of thing.
Okay, good to know. This is one that every time I look at it, it's like the box looks very cool. It's like it's got some good cover art. It's very compelling. And I always think, oh, that looks fun. And then I remember that it's a solo-only game.
Same.
And then I
yeah.
come back to it and I'm like, oh, but it sounds interesting. Like, oh, but it's
It's
solo-only
ranked
game.
so highly.
Yeah. Yeah, what is the rank on here?
It's like 200.
228? That's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Because this has been a positive experience, I could see that I might start dabbling a little bit more in solo only experiences and just see if, or for example, Hadrian's Wall is another one. So I said I played Three Sisters solo only and was pleasantly surprised by that as well. Hadrian's Wall, I guess, is a lot like Three Sisters in that it's, lots of tracks. It's a very complex, much more complex roll and write with lots of tracks and interconnecting bonuses. And I guess that also plays really well as solo. So I might consider going after that as well.
You know that Bruno Catala is going to get involved here. Then it's going to be Under Falling Skies Duel.
That is it cooperative still, or is it competitive, or is it still solo only?
Maybe one person plays as the aliens and the other person
Okay,
plays
so
as the defender.
Competitive.
Yeah.
Okay. It'd be great if it was still a solitaire only game, but it was called Duel because you're dueling the aliens.
It's just two people can play at the same time, but there's just like two different games. And then
It's just a race
just
who
two-
can win faster.
it's just two copies. Yeah.
2 copies. All right, man.
Got him.
What about you this week? Anything to report?
No, like I said, 10% of nothing, homie. Got nothing.
All right. Then we better move on to our game of the week.
All right, let's do it. All right, it's our game of the week. I am introing it because Nate was just kind of being quiet, and I thought I should break the silence and just get this going. Raiders of the North Sea. Nate, I guess I didn't realize that you had played this.
Yo, we talked about this like 2 episodes ago.
All right, it looks like I have forgotten about that. When did you play this? Why did you play this? Yeah.
We were at a friend's house dog sitting, and I was just looking at his games, and they had Raiders, and I was like, cool, I can pull this out and learn it pretty quick because I know it's not
Yeah.
too complicated, and I've played Raiders of Scythia, even if I don't remember that much about it. So
Sure.
we busted it out. That was like a month or 2 months ago, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, all right, so it's still a bit fresh in your mind, but you've only played it once then?
Only once.
Okay. I guess I have the advantage then because I've played it 1.5 times. Yeah.
Wait, one and a half, like you guys got halfway through and it was getting late and you just put it away?
I think we like learned it and then played halfway through and then just kind of like didn't finish it or something. And then we like put it away, then pull it out again to officially play it to decide if we wanted to keep it.
Do you still keep it? Do you still have it?
I can't spoil that, man. We got to get to that later.
I'm guessing
gonna get-
yes.
You can't give my opinion that early. Come on, man. You know how this works. Okay, I'll describe it then. Raiders of the North Sea. This is a classic. This is probably what kind of put Garfield games on the map. I know they had a couple other. Is this the third in the North Sea trilogy, or did another one come after it?
This is the third, yeah.
Okay, and I don't think the first two performed super well. Although I think the first one that came out still got him some notoriety. But this is the first big one. How about that? It's rank 104 on BGG, which is quite impressive. Came out 2015. So even after 9 years, it's still almost on the top 100. And this is a game that has a couple unique mechanisms implemented in it. So it's your Vikings. Everyone's competing as sort of a different little band of Vikings. You're operating from your little Norse land, and you're sailing across the ocean to do some raids on the poor little innocent Europeans, because that's fun. Although I guess Vikings are European too. You know what I mean. The mainlanders. And how one does this is it's a worker placement game, but it's got this fun little aspect where you always put down a worker on an action spot and you will take that action. And then you pick up a worker from a different action spot and then take that action. So in this way, it's a worker placement game where you don't own any of your own workers other than the worker that is currently in your hand, but you're just trading them out like this. And Shem Phillips and Sam McDonald, they mess with workers quite differently, quite frequently in their different games. Like Paladins of the West Kingdom, it's just a resource basically that you spend and lose. So it's cool how they always have a different take on it. And they, of course, re-implemented this in Raiders of Scythia to kind of re-scheme it a little bit, but they use that same worker mechanism. But beyond that, it's kind of pretty standard how you're using those different actions to get your resources. You're getting cards that represent crew, and you can get up to 5 crew members in your gang, your raiding party, and then you can go sail across the sea and also use a worker, where here's another interesting implementation, is you put down that worker on a raiding spot, and they are there forever. They are not regained. And there's a few different colors of workers that have different functions. So as you're going throughout the game, you're slowly, permanently submitting workers to raiding spots across the sea where they cannot be regained. So that actually slowly changes over the course of the game what sorts of things you can do, because different sorts of workers become available and become unavailable. And you can lose your raiding party. They all contribute different strengths, because as you perform a raid, you add up the combat strengths of the members of your crew and you roll some dice, and sometimes you can have some bonuses from armor if you have that equipped. And depending on how well you roll, you get a certain threshold that gets you points. That is basically the whole game. There's some contract fulfillment in there, resource management. Yeah, Raiders of the North Sea. How'd I do, Nate?
I'm going to say that your explanation honestly made it sound way more complicated than it is. I'm not saying that as not saying that as a negative thing, you know. It's just like, actually, it's conceptually, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, easy. Easy to learn. Like if you pull it
absolutely.
out in like an afternoon or an evening and learned it. This is a 2.56 on BGG. I'd say it might even be a little bit lighter in field than that.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay.
But maybe we should jump into our likes and dislikes.
Likes and dislikes. Likes, it is one of my favorite things about this is the design of the board itself. I find to be very creative. So you have one section that is segmented off to be just the worker placement section, essentially. And then the rest of the board are little areas that you can go raid. Fortresses or maybe even castles or little villages, whatever. It's all places you can go raid. And the further you go up the board, the more difficult, the higher the bar is for raiding those places. So at the beginning of the game, you can ignore like the top half of the board, and you're just focusing on those easy to attack places. And you work your way up, kind of this very visually progressive way of working through the game and attacking those higher spots. So I think they did a great job with the board itself, just represents that very well. It makes it easy to understand, like, those are the difficult spots, these are the easy spots. So I'm just going to focus on these easy ones for now and then start working my way up the board, like literally.
Yeah, it's a very naturally progressing game, which is cool. You just kind of go with the flow. All right, if that's your like, I'll give my like. I like the pick up and drop off mechanic. It's a very unique concept where it's worker placement, where any action is always available. You can always at least take any one action, because you can put down a worker on any spot that's there, but if a space is blocked, you'll just pick up that worker and you can take that action. However, specific pairs of actions will be unavailable. So you can always at least do one thing that you want, but you can't necessarily always do the 2 things that you want. So it's just sort of a different way to approach worker placement, and I like how it's refreshingly different. It kind of makes getting the 2 that you want a little bit more opportunistic than common. So in that way, you kind of just play what's available to you, but you also it's tactical. That's the word. It's a very tactical game in that sense.
I 100% agree. I think the worker placement aspect is very unique and works just so well. I mean, like you were saying, I won't reiterate too much, but just that, like, you can always do whatever you want, but you can't always do everything that you want on your turn. Mm-hmm. And even the, okay, I'm not going to take an actual worker action, I'm going to go raid a spot, you're sacrificing whatever worker you have to pick up a different worker of a different color. And so I like that a lot. No matter
Mm-hmm.
what, there's always this, like you said, picking up and dropping off workers. But that's mostly what your point was. So I'll move on to my third and final point, which is that
All right.
there are definitely different strategies in this game, because this game almost feels like a race. There's different ways to approach it, of course, but obviously you want to be able to attack those more powerful places sooner, and you want to attack more of them than your opponent does because they're going to give better rewards. And so there's different ways to approach the game. You can go really heavy, like trying to get Vikings, trying to get warriors, trying to really build that up so your strength gets really high, or you can just focus on getting certain types of goods and using the goods for completing contracts. There's definitely different ways to approach it, and what you do is dependent a lot, I feel like, on what your opponent does, what they're doing with their strategy, the position, the worker placement spots that they take. I feel like you have to react quite a bit instead of just kind of 100% doing your own thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that adds to replayability a lot when you have that interaction, but also there are different ways to go about the game. Like when Anna and I played this, as like not too long into the game, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to rush this. I'm just going to like
Hmm.
attack those upper spots of the board, because I think the game ends when like a certain amount of the upper spots have been attacked. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm just going to rush this and attack those as soon as possible. Instead of waiting till I have lots of strength so I can get the best rewards, I'm just going to rush that and try to get some rewards out of them, but I'll still be getting better rewards than she will doing the lower places, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just was just like, I'm just going to send it and just do that, you know? But you totally can do a different thing. You can play at a much slower pace and work your way up and get super great rewards, but you're playing at a slower pace. So, yeah, there's a lot you can do with it.
Yeah. How did that work out for you, taking that strategy?
I think I squeaked out a win. It was pretty close, but I did win.
Okay. All right. It's good to know. Well, it's fitting that that was your final like, because even though this is my second one, I have 3.5 likes remaining that I will go through now. I'll just go
Ooh,
pew,
all
pew,
right,
pew,
all
like
right.
that. So the half alike just plays off of the same worker system. I like the worker progression system. I like how you access more useful workers as you go, so they just become more available the farther you can go, and that changes the course of the game. I already kind of mentioned that in the description of the game, and yeah, I'll just call that a half point. My next 3 points. I like the crew. I appreciate that the crew members are both a requirement for raiding, because you always have to have at least a certain number of crew members to raid certain spots. Like the hardest ones, you have to have all 5. But it's not just like a barrier. They also give you benefits, so it's a requirement that also helps you out. So
Yeah.
each crew member will give you a certain strength contribution, but then they also have abilities, and those different abilities can be kind of fun to stack. Like one may give you more. I don't remember exactly how it works. They give you some sort of bonus or resources or points or something if you attack a specific type of place, specific rating area. So that's cool.
I hadn't thought about that too much, but I like that point, which is that there's this requirement of you have to have this many crew members to attack these spots. But it's not
Mm-hmm.
just like this is a cost you have to pay. It's
Yeah.
like this is a good thing still. You know, get the best cards you can, right? Or on the flip side, just get cards as quickly as possible. Either way, different
Yeah.
strategies. But still, they're going to be good no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah, and playing off of that, there's like a whole nother system with it. I did the thing, Nate. I said a whole nother. That's not a thing. Another whole part of this. The Valkyrie system. How the Valkyrie are little skull tokens that, depending on the spaces that you raid, you have to take all the resources available on a space that you plunder after you get it. So you get the resources, but some of them can be Valkyrie tokens that make you sacrifice a crew member of your choice. So you lose them. Now you're going to have to get more crew in the future. But that also bumps you up on the Valkyrie track, because there's like honor and death for the Vikings, honor and a glorious death and destruction in battle. And so the more you can move up on the Valkyrie track, that moves you up a little bit in end game points. So it's another little nifty aspect of that.
I have a weird perspective on the Valkyrie track, because to me, I think it's a really cool aspect that turns a lot of your decisions into like, here's the pros and the cons, right? You're going to be sacrificing something a lot of times. Is it worth it? And then there's the track that goes along with it, though. To me, though, it really feels like the game was already complete and the Valkyrie part was not in the game at all. And they were like, this needs more, right? This needs some kind of trade-off. It needs another element to it. And so in a way, it feels like a really tacked on thing, but I think it still works really well.
Sure. Well, it's kind of like Champions of Midgard, adding the
blame tokens?
blame tokens. No. What's the...
No, you're talking about the Valhalla expansion with
Valhalla expansion. Yeah. I was almost. It's not the Valkyrie expansion, is it? Yeah, the Valhalla expansion, where it gives you a reward, an incentive to be losing guys. So it's kind of similar in that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, all of that was my second point, my second and a half point. So move on to the next. I like that there's a lot of game here. There's a lot going on. Like kind of you said, when I had to describe the game, it made it sound very complicated because there is like a lot packed in there, but it doesn't feel very heavy. It's actually very simple to play. You just kind of take what's available to you, you get some stuff, you move on to the next available spot, and you go boom, 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 1, 2, 3. So it's cool that it feels like there's a lot packed in there, but it doesn't feel particularly cumbersome. And I'll just keep running through. My final point is I like the metal coins, those dope metal coins that probably increase the MSRP of the game, because little metal tokens are going to be a lot more expensive than cardboard tokens, but you got to respect the metal coins that they included in this game. Know what I'm saying? Did your copy have metal coins?
No, it did not. As far as I know.
What? Because this was not an upgrade that I got. It came with a copy that I got. So maybe that's like a different printing?
Maybe it's an earlier printing. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
But there was nothing deluxe upgraded whatsoever about the copy I played. So I don't know.
Interesting. That's weird.
But they are very cool. And the coolest part is that like all of their games use that coin. And so you could just keep those separate from the box and use them anytime you play like a West Kingdom game or a North Sea game.
Yeah, swap them out. Yeah, pretty nifty.
Okay.
I like the board too. It looks nice. All that was the overall aesthetic points. There you go. Those are my likes, Nate.
All right. What about your dislikes?
All right. For all that I said, for that very long list of things, all the cool concepts, all the cool mechanisms, all the cool aspects, I didn't want to keep the game, Nate.
You got rid of it.
I sold it.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know why. It was like I had a suspicion of it when we played it the first half a time, and then when we finally pulled it out the second time, probably like a couple months later, and really played it. I don't know. It's just it felt, I guess, like a little bit shallow to me, or just not particularly rewarding. I'm not saying it's a bad game. They did a good job with it, but the experience just kind of let me down a little bit. If this was maybe like one of the first games I had played early on in my gaming career, it probably would stick with me as like an evergreen classic.
Yeah.
But just with everything else I've played, it was not very gripping for me, and I just felt not quite bored, but just I didn't really feel invested in it. So at the end of the game, I was like, I don't know if I'd really want to play this again. Like I'd be fine with it if someone else had it, but at that point, it didn't seem worth it to keep.
That's interesting you mentioned that. I've never thought about it that way, but like you said, if I had played this earlier in my board gaming life, it probably would stick with me. And that's probably true because look where it is in the top 100, right? Or the top 200, right?
Totally.
It's right hanging outside the edges of the top 100 because I guess when it came out, it was really that kind of game for a lot of people. But both you and I have played it much later after we've played a lot of other very different games, the games that we like more. And I'm actually at the same place where my only dislike is quite simply that I feel like the lack maybe of complexity. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but I also just didn't feel super invested in it. It was it felt, I don't know. It's weird to describe because there's a lot of good decisions to make. There's not really ever any like super obvious choices. The game's never like completely tunneling you and saying, here's what you obviously should do this turn. You can kind of always do what you want, but it just wasn't that engaging. I don't know, you know? It's hard to explain. Maybe it's just not the type of game for you or for me.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not just me then that you felt kind of the same way. It's odd how the game works out like that. Like we had a lot of good things to say about it, but it was just like, yeah.
I mean, I know there's a very highly regarded expansion for this, and I wouldn't go out on a limb and buy the game and the expansion, but if somebody had the expansion, I would definitely want to try it out and see how it influenced my opinion.
Yeah. I saw a review video of Tom Vassell comparing these between Raiders of Scythia, and his opinion was that Raiders of Scythia is a better base game just by itself, but Raiders of the North Sea with that specific expansion is the much superior experience. But that was the thing. That's why I was trying to weigh, after I played it a second time, like, at this point, do I want to invest in getting an expansion for it in the hopes that it'll make me like it more? I was just like, I didn't want to take the risk. Yeah.
Okay. So that's, I mean, it's my consensus, not my consensus, my conclusion would be that it's definitely something I would recommend trying. And if you don't like, maybe this is the perfect game for people that like strategy games, but not complex strategy games, right?
Yeah.
For the people that love, I don't know, Ticket to Ride and stuff like that, where that's right in their wheelhouse, this probably falls right into that. It's a lighter weight, but still relatively interesting strategy game.
It's a good intro game. This might be like you played Catan, now try out Raiders of the North Sea. See how that tickles your Euro fancy.
Yeah, it's not a good intro game like, oh, you've only played Monopoly, let's play Raiders, but it's a good intro game like, okay, you've played a little, maybe older, simpler games, but you've still kind of played something in the hobby direction. Now we can whip this out maybe.
Yeah, like that.
Let's move on to our list that you suggested recently, and I clung on to like a barnacle. I like this idea. I like this idea a lot. This is 5 games that we wish our wives liked.
The fact that you were so excited about this makes me wonder, like, how are things with you and anime? Do we need to talk about something?
Everything's fine, and none of the games on my list are in my top 10, which is also nice. So
okay, interesting. Actually, I didn't think about evaluating that. Let me look at mine real quick. In my,
I think my highest, like my number one on this list, is in my top 20, but it's definitely not in my top 10. So that's good.
Actually, two of them are in my top 10.
2 of them are in your top 10.
So there's that.
Okay.
The lowest one is 32 for me.
The lowest one is 32. That's not a very wide spread, actually.
It's not. Yeah.
Mine ranges from the teens to 75.
Whoa, that's
wider
quite the spread. Yeah.
Okay, Cody, take it away. What is your 5th favorite game that Kirsten does not like?
Yeah. It was interesting making this list because there's a couple things that I did not include, such as Wingspan and Scythe, because those are very important games to me. But I can play both of those digitally, and I played each of them like over 100 times digitally. So that kind of it scratched the itch of needing to play those games. So because of that, I didn't feel they were worth mentioning in this list.
Okay, interesting.
Not that Kirsten actively dislikes those games, but we just haven't ever really like pulled them out over the last couple of years. But they didn't really qualify because I can play them digitally. That's fine. And so
you're not all shaken up about it. You can get over it.
No, it's chill. It's cool. It's fine. You know, I can replace a wife with a board game app. So there we go.
Sorry, what?
Just kidding. No. She doesn't really listen to these anymore, so she won't know.
Ooh,
I might tell her
okay.
anyway.
Good
though.
to know.
Yeah, got some freedom there. Hi, honey. Anyway, how about I just run you through how I kind of organized them a little bit? I went through and I got my little collection of games, and how I kind of organized them was not necessarily like number one is the game I like the most out of all of them. It's just more, I guess, the greater disparity of how much she doesn't want to play them versus how much I do want to play them, I guess. So they just kind of, they balance out. They have their own little system. All that ado to say, my number 5 is a game that I know you really, really like, and that I don't incredibly like, but do really like, and that's why it's not any higher on the list. This is Wayfarers of the South Tigris. Kirsten was not a fan of this at all. And again, it's not one where I'm like, I so want to play this game. It's more the disparity of how much she personally disliked the game that I don't know if we'll ever really get this back out on the table. Maybe on a future visitation from you, we'll get it out. But I know she was not a big fan. And so it's like, I kind of wish she liked it so we could pull it out and try it again. but I'm not too beat up over it. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, what is it about it? Is it just too abstract and complex?
I think
Or
it is fairly abstract, and I think there's just like so many things going on that it was just hard for her to kind of know what to do. She likes
yeah,
having a strategy. She likes being able to approach a game having a clear objective in mind, and this game is very hard to kind of trace that line through.
it's kind of sandboxy in that way. And that's funny
It
because
is.
I'm kind of the same way where if a game is too open-ended, I really struggle and I don't enjoy it very much either. It just feels like pain and I always feel like I'm not making the best move, right?
Yeah.
So I also feel like I'm the same kind of person that needs some guidance, but this one clicked for me. I liked it a lot.
Hmm.
My number
Very well.
5 is a game that Anna did not like simply because it was just too simple for her taste. And I actually felt the same way the first time we played it. And then I played it another time at a higher player count, and then a couple more times with other people. And every time I've played it, I've enjoyed it more. This is Veil of Eternity. This is a
Okay.
relatively simple game. It's a card drafting game that plays over the course of 10 rounds, and every round you can play a card, basically, and you can never have more cards played than whatever round you're in, and then the game ends after 10 rounds. But there's a couple cool aspects. One is that the economy system is you can only have, I believe, 4 pieces of currency. There's ones, threes, and sixes, but you can only have 4 tokens total. And so that makes a very, they take that and they really run with that, where you have certain cards that play off a strategy of the 1 currency and certain cards that play off a 3 coin strategy, and then other cards that play a bit off of a 6 coin strategy, to the point where it's not just like, well, you always want to have 4 sixes, where it's like a lot of times you can only use a 1 for a certain ability and stuff like that. And then that's the other thing, is all the cards, you can get some really interesting combos with the cards that come out and the ones that you end up adding to your tableau. And yes, it's very rules light and not that complicated, but I've come to appreciate it more every time I've played it, and just seeing the different interactions that can happen between the cards that come up, and seeing what other people do as well can be really cool to just see some of the little engines that people turn out. Yeah, I enjoy it quite a bit. Like I said, it was too simple for Anna, and I am looking forward to an expansion coming out, because there's no way that's not going to happen. This game would be incredibly easy to make an expansion for, and I think it was relatively popular. So
Hmm. It looks very pretty. Who's the artist on this?
I
have to
actually don't like
recognize
the
it.
art.
Okay.
There's 5 artists. I think there's one for each kind of class of
Oh,
creatures in the
wow.
game, and I'm not a huge fan of the art in general, actually, to be honest.
Okay. All right. But you recommend it, like trying out the game.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend just buying it though, because I think you might have a similar experience to Anna and not feel like you want to give it more time and more
Hmm.
effort and
Okay.
more plays, and that you might only play it once and never again. So I wouldn't recommend buying it necessarily.
Okay. My number 4 then is a game that I played for the first time. Was it like the beginning of this year? I think. I believe so. This is a this will be a new game that goes in one of our lists, like at the end of the year, however we do that. This is number 11 for me. Is it where it landed, despite only playing it twice? This is Carnegie, which I believe you expressed an interest in playing next I see you. So I'm excited to teach you that game.
Absolutely.
And Kirsten was not particularly a fan of it. I think it was similar for her. This is not as bad as Wayfarers, but I think she felt the same way, in that she just wasn't really sure what to do, like what to focus on, where to go, because it is pretty open-ended on what you can do. And there's also a lot to manage. Like, you have your own little player board where you have a bunch of workers that can be assigned to stations. There's like little desks you can put them at. And they all, yeah, it's kind of cool. There's little tiles with like 2 or 3 desks on them, depending. And they will give you certain bonuses or certain abilities that will be ongoing, boost to certain parts of the game. Some of them you then like send on a mission and assign to the central player board, and those will have certain payoffs as you complete those missions or recall them, or as you the game has. It will randomly score different parts of the board as you progress. So if you have people out on those missions in that area of the board, when you score, you'll get points based off of them. So there's that whole little system you're working on. But then there's also this networking system, almost like Ticket to Ride, where you're trying to connect different regions and upgrade those connections so that you can score off of them. It's a game I'm quite fascinated by, and I'm excited to play again, but I was sad that Kirsten was not particularly interested in it. I don't think she hated it, so I think she'd be fine playing it again if I wanted to pull it out, but it was not quite her cup of tea.
It's interesting. I think this feeling of being overwhelmed by a game with so many options, the only solution for that, ironically, is probably to play the game again. Because the first time you play something, you don't even know what to pursue or how to pursue it. You can see the steps that you can take, but you don't really know what's going to lead to what and how effective your choices are going to be. So I think a lot of times you just have to come back to it a second time so that you can actually have the full perspective going into the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm. Which is tough when we don't play games super often right now. It's if there's a game that you just like play once, like, well, we'll try this out again another 5 months from now. Like, how does this work again?
Yeah,
You've
you have to
completely
relearn
forgotten
it.
everything. Yeah.
That's how I am with A Feast for Odin. I see the design. I think it's brilliant. It was way too open-ended for me to the point where I didn't really want to play it again, even though I knew a second play would be better, you know? And at this point, it's been long enough that it would just be difficult to play again anyways.
Sure.
So
it's one I really want to try. That's for sure.
My number 4 is a Knizia classic, but sadly just did not vibe with Anna. For whatever reason, I feel like she never really could put it into words, but the Quest for El Dorado is an interesting little deck builder with kind of a revolving market of cards available to each player. And then you're using these cards to navigate your little, not meeple, but explorer, not standee, it's a wooden piece. You're a little explorer through these this randomized map of all these different little tiles and different terrains, and you use your cards to traverse different terrains, and you can stop by caves to get little bonuses and stuff like that. But it's literally a race. It's literally like 100% a race trying to get to the end before the other players do. And it's cool. You know, you can take the longer routes, but the longer routes you can get more bonuses, or you can just try and take the shortest route possible and just really try and rush it, but you're not going to get to do a lot of cool special things. But then there's these cards where, like, most of the cool cards don't start as available in the market, but whenever a certain type of card is completely bought out, whoever bought it out gets to pick a new card from the cards that aren't available to add to the market. So that's kind of a cool system where you're not going to be able to use all the cards every game. And so you'll see some different combinations of cards coming out in different plays. But yeah, for whatever reason, she just didn't like it. And that's just how it is. I don't like Raiders of the North Sea that much, and she didn't like El Dorado that much. So
sure. Looking at the BGG entry for this is the sort of game where just by the appearance, I would be like, oh yeah, I'm not interested in that. Just like kind of glance right over the drab Euro colors of it all.
Oh, it was remade, but I honestly don't think it looks that much better. It was redone with Vincent Detroit artwork, and everyone went ballistic over it. And I honestly feel like it doesn't even look that much better. That's my opinion. Rail me.
That's unfortunate. Well, I'll have to give it a try then, based off of your recommendation. But that does not have anything to do with my number 3, which I so artfully just transitioned to. Number 3, this is the lowest game on my list. This is my number 32, so that's the end of the spread. Mm-hmm. And it's a fair amount different in context from the first 2 games, where the first 2 games that I listed were very complex. There was a lot going on, very sandboxy, and Kirsten was like, meh. This is a very simple game. This is Acropolis. I'm excited to teach you this. That I very much enjoyed. Like, it's quick playing. It's like 20 minutes. You're just kind of stacking tiles on top of each other and expanding them out to try to get the best scoring area. But I guess it's just maybe too abstract for Kirsten thematically, and she just did not really enjoy it. Like, she'll play it because I like to play it, but she's not particularly a fan of it. I love the system of how you have these little triangular shaped hex tiles. They're like 3 hex tiles connected together to make sort of a triangle, and you're placing them all out, and they'll have randomized colored districts on them. And if you can, as you're laying like a base layer, you can cover up districts so they won't score anymore. But the district that now is elevated to the second level, it will score twice as much because they score based off of their level. And I just love that little puzzle of putting everything together and trying to get to your advantage your best items stacked as high as possible. As it's just fascinating to me.
I think I'm gonna love that system too, and I'm very much looking forward to trying it.
Yeah, I feel like you'll enjoy it. I anticipate you acquiring this in the future. Maybe, possibly. We'll see.
Okay. My number 3 is that Anna only ever played once. And it's very clearly stuck in my head because after the game, she was basically like, I'm in a bad mood now because of this game. The game actually put her in a bad mood. And she was just like, I hate this game.
Wait, I got it. Was it the trial version of Space Cats that we all played together?
No, I think at that time she wasn't close enough to me to reveal that about, something my best friend made. But she probably did feel that way. Although, to be fair, that was an interesting play. Didn't I find some game-breaking combo, and I just kept I had this amazing card and I kept pulling it out of my discard somehow and just playing it over and over and over again?
I just remember the game was broken because everything cost way too much and took way too long. I just haven't had time to actually balance it yet. But
there is a Space Cats game that just is maybe being kickstarted right now, I think.
What?
Yeah, they might have stolen this from you. I can't remember what it's called, but if you look up Space Cats board game or something, you might be able to find it. It has some weird acronym like WFMP or I don't know. It has some weird acronym, but it's definitely a cats in space theme. So yeah, sorry to break that to you.
What is that? From 2018, there's a game called Space Cats Fight Fascism. It's ranked 10,000.
That's weird. Isn't that the name of your prospective expansion for Space Cats? That's strange.
Oh yeah, Fight Fascism for sure. Fascism.
Fight fascism with cats. Okay, my number 3. Anna despises It's Agricola, and I totally get it. I 100% get it, because this can be a very mean game, but it can also be a very punishing. It is a very punishing game. No matter how good you are at it, it is punishing, and you will be stressed. Even if you love this game and you're very good at this game, you're still going to walk away with those emotions 99% of the time. I think it's a great design, and I wouldn't say I love the game, but I do like it quite a bit. And I for anybody who doesn't know, this is a very tight worker placement game that has the dreaded feed your workers, and if you don't, there's a very severe point punishment for not feeding your workers. And it's got a very tight economy, and you cannot do everything, but you're kind of supposed to, because if you don't do everything, you'll again be punished with negative points. So it's very just brutal in that way. But a lot of people like that, and I am one of the people that really has been very pleased with this game, with Agricola. So, but I totally get it. And in general, Anna has not liked Uwe games that much. She did like Feast Roden quite a bit, though, so who knows?
I think, Nate, then you should try out good old Evacuation. It's a game I've still only played once, but it takes that to the next level, where you have the planet you're starting on and the planet you're going to, and you play over, I think, 4 or 5 rounds, and each round there's a different feeding requirement on each of the planets. So for the first round, there's only a feed requirement on the planet you're on because you haven't moved yet. But as it progresses, the feed requirement starts increasing on the other planet. So there's this stress of you need to get enough resources over to the other planet in order to satisfy the requirements over there, while also still maintaining the requirements on the planet you're on. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
So it's about transferring your resources, but doing it at the right pace.
Yes, yeah. It's a well-paced game. It's a good way to put it.
Interesting.
Yeah. But all that to say, that's not on my list, because my number 2, it was sort of weird putting it this high, because this is a game that I can play to an extent digitally. I don't have an app for it. This is on Board Game Arena, but it's high on my list because I have come to adore this game, and I really wish we could play it more here at home. This is Tapestry. And the
Yeah.
other aspect is the digital version of this does not well incorporate the expansions and does not have all of the expansions. Whereas in my possession, I have all of the expansions for Tapestry. And Kirsten, to her credit, she did not like it, I think, the first couple times we played. But then one time she was like, you know what? I want to try Tapestry again.
And you were
And
like,
I really
yes.
Yeah, let's do it. Pull it out. And I spent a little time like really giving her some specific ways to approach it, because this is another sandboxy game where there's all sorts of things you can do and ways to approach.
True.
And
Yeah.
the game comes down to knowing kind of what you should be doing at each stage of the game. That can be hard to keep that all together. And I think she enjoyed it more that time, but she's still not a mega big fan of it. So hopefully we can pull this out again. And again, it's my number 2 on the list because I just like it so much, and it's that much more urgent for me to want to play this game. Tapestry. Yeah.
Such a good game, man. Such a good game. My number 2.
You own this, right?
I do own it. I own this, and I own the first 2 expansions. I don't have Fantasies and Futures, I believe it's called.
Did you bring it with you to old West Virginia?
Yes, I have it with me currently.
Okay. Yeah, Fantasies and Futures is pretty fun. It really it changes up some of the civilizations on the player mats that you can play with quite spectacularly.
Cool.
Yep.
My last 2 games are by the same designer, which is interesting. And Anna really does not like either of these games, which makes me very sad. But the weird thing is that this first game, I feel like no one, I mean, it definitely doesn't get talked about anymore. It's all but forgotten except by the people that really like it. Even though it won the Kennerspiel des Jahres, I believe. This is Broom Service by Alexander Pfister. Broom Service is a very divisive game because it has this system where everyone has the same hand of characters and you're going to pick a few at the beginning of a round to use. And then on your turn, one of the ones that you selected, so you have a hand of like maybe 4 out of the 10 cards. So the other 6 are out of this round, and you have 4 or whatever in your hand. You pick one to play, and you can play it as the strong version, which gives you the best ability. But if you play it as the strong version, if anybody else selected that card for their hand this round, yours gets completely nullified, and they get to play theirs. So instead, you can pick the weak option, where nobody can nullify you, even if they pick the same card. I think they can just follow, basically, and take a weak action as well, or a strong one. So you can take the weak action, which you won't be punished for, but you always want to take the strong action. It's always so much better. And so you always want to do it, and you're just sitting there. It's a mind game, looking at the other person's... It's basically a pick-up and drop-off game. You're looking at the other person's positions on the board, trying to guess what they're going to accomplish, and then, like, would they pick this card? But then you know they're having the exact same thought process in their head, looking at where you are, assuming that you're going to pick the card that you want to pick. And so should you even pick it? And if you do, should you really risk trying to get the strong ability? I absolutely adore that system. I think it can be very angering and extremely satisfying, like within a 5-second span, you know? I just love it. And Anna was on the other end of the spectrum. She absolutely hated that.
Yeah.
And now I think the funny thing is I think it probably even plays better at 2 than it does with more players, because the more people in the game, the more likely it is that someone's going to have the same.
That's what I was going to say. Like, if you keep the same number of cards, but you have an increased number of players, like the chances are going to increase.
Yeah. But man,
this reminds
so
me,
much fun, dude.
I kind of want to play this now. It's the vibe of it kind of reminds me of the rock paper scissors mechanic. Probably well exemplified in Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, where when you do a combat, there's like all these different combat cards that will interact differently if someone else picks one. I know it's kind of a different system, but the same idea of where it's this mind game of you're trying to figure out what someone else is going to pick so that you can pick the best one in response to it.
Yeah.
And is this like a smaller game? Like, it's not particularly expensive?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably find it relatively cheap. I don't know if it's still in print. You could almost certainly find a used copy for like, I bet if you look at BGG Marketplace, that you could probably find a used copy for $10 plus shipping, would be my hunch. It's not a nice production. It's very basic. It's in a Castles of Burgundy size box. Not a lot of components. But man, it's such a fantastic design.
All right. I'll have to check this out. This looks kind of fun. I remember you talking about it back in the day when you first had played it.
Back in the day.
But yeah, back in the day. All right, well, this brings me to my number one. This is a game that is number 10 on my list. It is a game that both you and I adore, that's very difficult to get to the table, and that you sold to me, that is now in my possession.
I know what this is. Have you played this with Kirsten?
I have not.
Well, then how can this be on your list?
Well, I'll explain. Stronghold 2nd Edition.
What?
Stronghold 2nd Edition. It's
illegal.
On the list. It's Smeagol, did you say?
I said illegal.
Oh, okay. It's like Smeagol. Like,
why does it try Smeagol?
Uncalled for.
Anyway.
Uncalled
No,
for.
this qualifies because I adore this game and I so want to play it. Like, to the point to where I didn't know if I would ever play it again, but I was still willing to buy it off of you so that I'd have the opportunity. And maybe you and I someday will play this again. But I know that this is a game like diametrically opposed to what Kirsten would enjoy. It's like a force on force game where it's super thinky if you're trying to manage all these different spots, and you're like, if you're the defender, you're trying to survive, and if you're the attacker, you're trying to break all these different points, and there's a lot of math going into it, a lot of mind games. This is the kind of thing she would despise. And she said she'd be willing to play with me at some point, and we'll, you know, it's like a 3 or 4 hour game. Which
it might
is
not
another
be.
reason that she's
it
not
might not be
thrilled
when
about
you
it.
play with her.
Yeah, so we'll just have to see. Yeah, it could be a 1 hour game, could be a 5 hour game. Let's find out.
Right.
But I went to the extent of like pulling out the board and showing her how it works and everything, and like I understand that this is not a game that she will enjoy at all. So yes, maybe it's a little bit of cheating that I know she hasn't played it, but I still wish that she would really want to play this game or be interested in it. So that's my number one.
That's too bad you didn't save that for our next list, which is our top 5 games that we think our wives don't like. But oh well.
That we think our wives don't like?
Yeah, like 5 games we haven't played with them, but we are assuming that they won't like.
Actually, I was thinking on the flip side, we could do top 5 games we wish our wives didn't like. You know, there's like a game they always want to play, and we're like, oh, please no.
Oh, I can make that list pretty easily.
Okay, that'll be fun. We'll have to follow up with this one.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. And it's funny, actually, thinking about Stronghold, the mentality aspect is very similar to Broom Surface. So maybe I wouldn't actually condone you purchasing Broom Service, because Kirsten probably won't like it either, but you might like it a lot.
Okay.
So
All right. Okay.
Yeah. All right, my number one. True to as I said, this is also an Alexander Pfister game. I actually had a chance to play this again not too long ago. Isle of Skye, from Chieftain to King, is the unnecessary colon thing.
Yes. That's great.
Unnecessary
Well
colon. That sounds like a good Twitter handle. Okay.
We all have necessary colons, Nate.
Isle of Skye is a play on the Carcassonne tile laying roads, fields, cities, with the weird twist that roads don't have to line up with other roads, just terrain types have to match. It's very funky, very strange to play that way. But the coolest part about this game is you draw 3 tiles at the beginning of every round, and then you're secretly going to place prices on each one, and then everyone reveals at the same time, and the other players have options to buy your pieces that you priced. You have options to buy theirs. And then after all the buying's done, anything from yours that didn't get purchased, you have to purchase for the price that you associated with it. So it's another mind game of how badly are my opponents going to want the pieces that I have? How badly do I want the pieces that I have? If I put a really high price on it, nobody's going to buy it, but then that's the price I'm paying for it. So it's always this balance, this mind game. Again, maybe it's the mind game stuff that Anna doesn't like. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that's a fantastic system. And then it has the same revolving scoring that Cartographers has, which I just love. So absolutely adore this game. Such a good game.
I know I keep saying this, like everything you list, but what this reminds me of is a game that I have not played, but if you like Isle of Skye so much, I bet you'd like it. Castles of Mad King Ludwig has a similar mechanism that I've just seen in videos, but basically each round, it cycles who the like dealer is, or the first player, whatever, primary person, and that person takes a selection of tiles. These are tiles that you draft, and you're trying to build like a little castle out of all the different rooms. But you arrange them however you like. Like they don't have inherent cost attached to them, I don't think. There's just a range of cost. So whatever one you decide will be the cheapest has a set amount. There'll be like 100 or something. I don't remember what it is. And then the most expensive one will be like significantly more expensive. And so it's this mind game of since you're the dealer for a given round, maybe there's a tile that you really want and you're hoping no one else drafts it, because I think you're like one of the last people that gets to draft if you're the one that sets them out. And so you're trying to figure out where to put it. Like, if I really want it, of course, it would be ideal if I can play it as cheap as possible, so then I can buy it for cheap. But if I make it cheap, other people are more likely then to buy it instead of the expensive one. So it's like, if you really want it, do you make it more expensive? Does that kind of feel the same?
Well, I'd let you finish because I didn't want to rain on your parade, but I have played that game. And
dang it.
My experience with it is, I mean, obviously it's kind of a similar mechanism. I think that game would be best with 2 players. I played it at 3, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm the one setting the prices. Do I really want to take the time to examine both of my opponent's castles and figure out what's most valuable to them? I really should, because I want to put their pieces that they're going to want at just the right price where it's going to, because I don't know if you said this, but when they buy the tiles, the money goes to the person that was setting them up. That's how you get income. So... which is a really cool element, you know? And so you have to balance, like, okay, this person obviously wants this piece, so I have to put it right at the right position where they're willing to pay the price, but not so high, because then I'm getting nothing out of it, right? I think that's a brilliant mechanism, but I think this game needs to be played at 2 players only for me, because it's just too much to... It really slows the game down if everyone's really analyzing what the other people are doing. Because the person will take 3-4 minutes assigning prices, and the other people are just sitting there, literally can't do anything, and you're just like, all right, whatever, just put them somewhere, put them anywhere. I don't even care. I don't care what I get. Just hurry up and give them prices, you know? So I feel like it'd be a lot better with 2. But then also, like, the tile laying element of that is great, because there's no really set sizes, and so you can do some really funky stuff with your castle.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that you're not going to be interested in Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, where you have to have 3 or more players.
Somebody in the group owns that. We almost played it the other day.
Really?
Yes, I'm sure I'll get that to the table before too long here, and I'll let you know how I feel, because we've both played Between Two Cities. Neither of us loved it, but I think we both appreciated the design, because it is very creative.
It's just hard when you basically only ever play games with 2 people. It's like hard to keep a game like that in your collection. You know?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, all right then. That was a fun list.
Should we actually do the follow-up of that you mentioned?
I would like that. Yeah.
Should we do it immediately?
Like immediately next
Let's
episode?
Let's do it immediately.
Let's do it. Okay.
What did we say? We're going to do the top 5 games that we wish our wives didn't like?
Yes.
Fantastic.
The games we're tired of.
I love it. All right.
Okay.
Coming to theaters near you.
Part 2. Anything else you want to say, Nate?
And remember,
the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep.
Jack Frost? What is that?
Robert Frost. It's a poem.
Yeah, okay. What did I say? Jack Frost?
Jack Frost?
Yo, what is that? Jack
the
Frost,
legendary poet, Jack Frost. Always nipping at your nose, know what I'm saying?
What is that actually, Robert Frost? What is it?
Yeah, it's Robert Frost.
Really? What?
Yeah.
Well, I sounded like an idiot, but that was actually a really good guess then.
Well played. That was I don't know if you would have had that class by the time you came to Amity, but it was in middle school. We had to memorize that poem.
No. There was no memorizing poetry, just the preamble to the Constitution, I think.
Ah, yes, that.
Is this our outro?
All right.
I think this is our outro.